Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rahmat. Apologies if slightly for my tardiness. On the way here, a very big oil tanker lost control. It actually blocked the whole road, so it took us about 40 extra minutes to actually get here. Now just quickly, I think a lot of you are wondering, especially here in Malaysia, we need cables, right? Yes? In order to make things happen, we need cables, right? If you take a look at the effect of that, read about this news recently? What about this one? Yeah? This news article states that the Saudis are charging 5 of their officers with this particular crime. But the Saudi prince is not to be blamed. We know about cables. Do we really buy that story? And what about this one? What about this one here? Just recently, Mr. Gobind Singh announced that there's a new finance board. How are these people selected? How do we know that they will actually represent our interests? How do we know that we've selected the right people? Don't you ask themselves that question? Here's another scenario. Suppose you are responsible to select between 2 people, yes, to actually help you carry out some sort of project. It could be this TEDx talk. It could be a particular project. It could be convocation. And these 2 people, on paper, are equal. Just so that A is your kakila, your friend. Who would you choose? A or B? Now, I think that is one of the questions that we ask ourselves as we move into Malaysia Baru. Trying to figure out how do we make the best choices when in actual fact, the best choice might be in front of our eyes. Before we go there, I want to highlight to you an example of capability, as the topic of today's talk is all about. It's capability versus capability. Before that, do you have an idea what capability probably stands for? No? You know, here in Malaysia we talk about cables, right? Oh, that person, the cables, wow, very strong, very powerful, right? And then the person, nah, the cables, not really there. Yes? It's essentially our measure, our nuances of how much power does a particular person's network has. Yeah? So are we on the same page then? Power of the networks. So that is what we'll be talking about today. In order to explain how Trump won, Washington Post actually wrote a particular article a couple of years back explaining to the people what Trump did. And here is an excerpt from that particular article, and I have abridged it. If you take a look at this particular diagram, it really asks the question to about 14 people. Hey, if there are 2 baseball caps, one's blue, the other's orange, which one do you prefer? And this particular diagram shows which ones they chose. Those in blue chose the blue baseball cap. Those in orange chose the orange baseball cap. Now, if we use democracy, like the previous speaker mentioned, who will win, blue or orange? Can I get some interaction here? Orange, yes? Orange, according to democracy, or some people call it democracy. It's orange, obviously, evidently. that is not always the case. And in order to figure what the right answer is, we have to look into sociology. And that is what this diagram really represents. Notice, see whether I can figure out the laser. Notice that each circle has got a line associated with it. That line denotes who talks to who. In this case, for example, person number 1 talks to person number 8, as well as person number 11. That's what those lines represent. Yeah? So let's take a look at that. Let's delve into sociology and figure out what those lines mean, what those networks really represent. Let's take a look. We have data on who talks to who, and note, everybody in orange only talks to somebody in blue, except for one particular person. I believe it's the next person here. Otherwise, it's always orange talking to blue. What does that mean? It means, from a sociological perspective, we can map out these combinations, these communication networks, and figure out who are the central key influences. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Trump focused. The key influences are those in blue because of what's known as their centrality. Yes. In Malay, we might call them botais. Cantonese, we'll call them Naigors or Naigates. Yes? I think that explains the concept, yes. And I think everybody understands, yes. These are the central people. They may not be the most highly ranked person in an organization, but they are considered to be the main reference person or persons. Trump focused on that. He realized that if he actually got people to analyze who those central people are, those key influences are, and then put money on those people, he has a chance. Bearing in mind, before the elections, or even on the eve of the elections, nobody really gave Trump a chance. This is the reality. And the great thing, ladies and gentlemen, or maybe in terms of our side, not so good things. If you can actually analyze that mathematically, you can identify those key influences. And that's what this diagram really talks about. The key influences are those with the greatest weight in the network. And you can represent them diagrammatically with the size. So you see one particular person centered there, and there's a weight. And all this, ladies and gentlemen, all these calculations are actually based on engineering concepts. This is an example of multidisciplinary application. Engineering, link it to sociology, and then figure out how can we win elections. And that's what Trump essentially focuses resources on. By focusing on those who are central players, the key influences, he can actually get people to decide, you know what, I don't think I'll vote for the top dog, I'll vote for the underdog. The underdog happened to be Donald Trump. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why Trump won. Say what you might want, or what you like about him, but you'll have to admit, he is a very good business person, very good with data analytics. You might ask the question, how do we do this? It seems to be very powerful. It is. It's acknowledged to be the tool for you to actually make changes to people's decisions. Here's the key, ladies and gentlemen. We need to look at social capital. I take it that you're familiar with the concept of human capital, yes? In Malay it's called super, or rather modal insa. Here it's called human capital. But there's something we have to remember. that Lego pieces by themselves do not mean anything. They're just pretty, colorful pieces with studs on them. But when you bring them together, that's when you see magic. I think the cheapest Millennium Falcon Lego now is about, what, 2,000 ringgit? Anybody know? No idea? No Star Wars fans here? That's okay, I'm not a fan either. I'm more like a Trekkie, Star Trek fan. Yes? So this, ladies and gentlemen, the social capital is what we need to measure to figure out which one's more important, or how do we manage the capability of people. Because bearing in mind, regardless of how important somebody's capability is, at the end of the day, we must understand how there's value in the social makeup of an organization. We talk about social capital. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the elements. Note, social capital is made up of three. The first one is relational. We usually hear this referred to as soft skills in Malaysia. In literature, in research, it's called relational skills. So these are made up of elements like trust, benevolence, how much you care for the other person, or how you display that care. Information that you get, as well as emotions. Now, emotions, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most strongest relational element here. And we have to measure that. If you want to know whether somebody has the right capability, we need to find a way of measuring that. And we can. Yeah. Next is the cognitive element. These is where the technical skills lie. Yes? The capability. Linguistic skills, coding skills, ideas that you may have, all those fall under the cognitive element of a person. But wait, I mentioned earlier that networks are important. Something that we usually refer to as know who. Anybody not familiar with that idea? Right. I'll explain to Ms. On. Yeah. So know who refers to who you know, who you refer to, and who you rely on to actually make things happen. Yes. It's not just who you know here, you see. It's actually who is dependent on you to make things go, who you rely on for advice, who you go to for money, get resources. So that is the third element in social capital. So just quickly, let's recap. The soft skills or relational skills, the technical skills, your know-how, and the structure of your communication networks, your know-who. All together, brought in, taken together as social capital. So social capital puts all these onto one single dashboard. I'd like to give you an example from real life. I can't identify which organization this is, but what I can tell you that it is based in Australia. What you can see on the left side is a typical organization chart. Whenever you go to an office, to a building, to a headquarters, you may see this pasted outside the office. Who's the senior vice president? Who's in charge of this unit? Who's in charge of this unit? However, we know for a fact, yes, based on business interactions as well as research, that that's not always the case. We need to actually measure the know-who. And that's what we did in this organization. What we found out was that the person who's actually relatively low in the hierarchy was central in that organization. You know what that means? What that means is that because this person is relatively junior, the boss might actually forget to actually do a proper assessment. This person may be missed out for promotions. This person may then get frustrated and decide to leave. Guess what happens? When this person leaves, the whole organization crumbles. The whole organization is paralyzed. And the bosses have absolutely no idea what happened. Unless they actually measure the capability of the people within the organization, not just the capabilities. Are you with me so far? Yes. So that's why it's actually important to actually measure these elements. And it's not good enough to just purely use sociology. We need to actually integrate engineering knowledge and elements of social sciences to make this work. So those of you who are in engineering, who is wondering, can I actually make this transition? My answer is, yes, you can. I'm an example. I actually do this for a living. What do we use capability? We use capability to determine who's suitable. You use capability to determine who actually is communicating. Have you been in those organizations where there are passengers? Have you? Yeah, you're the boss? Yes, I see some people nodding in front. Yes, exactly. I've seen that happen. So, measuring capability helps you figure out who those passengers are. And then helps you make a decision whether you retain them, or you decide, bye-bye. Next, trying to figure out whether people are innovative. And I'll explain that a bit. The fourth one, it helps you measure whether there's too little or too much. As you can imagine, if there's too much trust in an organization, you will have people able to do anything with total immunity. Sound familiar? I think we voted them out in the last election. Yes. Right, thank you for your vote of confidence. Finally, or rather the fifth item, who are the real captains? Who are the people really gluing the organization together? Who's really making things happen? And who's just standing on the sidelines, pulling in the salaries, doing nothing? Of course, this will actually make people clearly see who are those people who do nothing. So it's a bit risky if bosses don't understand what it really measures, but you need to actually do this to find out how to optimize your resources. So now, just want to actually clarify, it's not really capability versus capability. It's capability must measure, must include capability. It's not an issue of versus, it's an issue of looking at them together. Now, let me actually illustrate this with some of the examples. But before that, here are some of the applications of social capital in order to measure the capability of people. You can use it for innovation, trying to figure out how to actually come up with fresh ideas and then push it across. You can also use it to manage projects, to figure out how things are happening, who's communicating, who's passing the information, and who's just plain lazy. Next, you can look at the development of people. You can take a look at who are the central key players in an organization, and you leverage on them to help you get everybody trained properly. And this is very important, especially in the 21st century. Classrooms, schools, universities. And for your information, here in Malaysia, Strand Aerospace is actually currently using this to develop graduates to fit into high-value jobs. There's productivity and restructuring. Let me illustrate this with some examples. Innovation method. Let's take a look at the structure, communication of two people. Let's call them Adam and Mark, or Adam and Matt, whichever way you like to pronounce it. If you look at their networks, those 5 people have got different communication networks. Now, here's where I need your help to try to figure out the answer to this question. Who has stronger cables or more capability for innovation? Is it Adam or is it Matt? Who would vote for Adam? Right. And who would vote for Matt? I see the group, or rather the audience, is totally split here. The answer to that question is actually, it depends on what you want. Here's the explanation. Let me just go on to the next slide. In innovation, you actually have stages. There's the creativity-oriented work behavior, where you're looking at people coming up with fresh ideas, being creative. And then you have the implementation-based work behavior. People who actually do the work. And I think all of us understand, people who are very creative, who can come up with ideas, they're not really good at doing work. Does that sound familiar? Yes. And those who are very good at executing things, getting things done, either they're not very good at coming up with ideas or they just don't have the time. Right? Now, you are probably in those organizations who have people who can do both. But what's optimal is actually to figure out who's better at creating those ideas and who's better at executing those ideas, and make sure they are given the resources to do those roles. And one of the ways to determine who's on this side and who's on this side is measure the networks. So now we know that in actual fact, Matt's network is better to generate fresh ideas. He is better suited to generate ideas. Adam's network is better to coordinate across multiple fields. So Adam is better suited to execute ideas. Yes? So, very simple way of figuring out who has the right capability for what role. And a lot of this have been researched a number of times, and the information, the knowledge is available to us. Let's use it. Now next, restructuring. We know that sometimes in organizations there are problems, and we've got to find a way of making things better. And one way is actually to change the structure of the organization you're in. You can't remain in the same manner. Yes. So here's an example from my own business work. I have a company who's selected, or rather, which is changing their business. They're moving into high-value manufacturing. The problem is, they actually have their current business that needs to keep going. The question would be, how does the senior manager select the people to go into high-value manufacturing where the salaries are higher, and who does he keep in the current business? So this is what we did for them. We actually measured their networks. It looks like this. It looks like a mess. But when we filter out the noise, using an engineering concept, mind you, we found out that, hey, Mr. X, the name of the senior manager, there are 3 teams within this organization. We can measure their backbones here. Does that sound right? And Mr. X said, yeah, exactly, yeah, we know. Who are they? I have a feel who are the central people, but I don't know who's who. We help them see who's in those groups. And then the next question, how do we select people to go into the high-value industry? To go there, what we had to do was actually not only measure the networks, but to measure all the social capital elements, the know-who, captured here, the know-how, as well as the relational skills. And when we captured all of that, this is what we found. Just to share with you, this is what's known as a traffic lighted graph. A traffic lighted graph uses typical traffic light to tell people, right, the green ones, they are ready to go. The yellow ones, not really suitable. And the red ones, well, you better think 10 times before you decide to give them higher salaries. You don't know what is the funniest thing out of this? It was funny to us, not so funny to the senior manager. Guess what color the senior manager was? Not green. Exactly. Red. I remembered when I presented the results, he looked at me, kept quiet for 10 seconds, and said after that, "So you're telling me I'm useless?" No. This data essentially tells you, don't go into that high value industry. You are not suited for that. You are suited to maintain the current business. A year after that, I met him at an exhibition and he greeted me very warmly and said, "Hey Rahmat, hey, thanks so much for that advice. I'm glad I took your advice. Everything's running well." Ladies and gentlemen, when you run a business, you expect that sometimes your recommendations as a consultant isn't quite exactly right. But to have your clients come to you and say, "Thank you, you saved my career." That's the power of multi-engineering, or rather, interdisciplinary work. When you are able to integrate that, you can affect people's lives positively. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope with that particular explanation, you have a feel as to what is the power of capability. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.